Vivian, for 3 years I drove 40 minutes each way to help my parents keep their house, their insurance, their dignity, while my brother's girlfriend called me the spare behind my back at Thanksgiving. They laughed. I kept writing the checks. Then her company landed a government contract, and the project lead turned out to be my direct report. The morning it all started, I was sitting cross-legged on my apartment floor in Charlotte, surrounded by ribbon and tissue paper. Outside, it was the kind of October Saturday that couldn't decide if it wanted to be fall yet, warm enough for short sleeves, but with a bite underneath that reminded you winter was coming whether you were ready or not. I was wrapping a bread maker, not just any bread maker, the one my mother had mentioned 3 times since July, once while we were in the kitchen making pie crust, once in a text she sent at 11 at night, once while standing in the Williams-Sonoma in South Park, pointing at it with both hands like she was on a game show. I had screenshot the model number, ordered it 2 weeks early, and driven to pick it up myself because I didn't trust porch delivery. The card I was writing said, "Mom and Dad, 35 years is something worth celebrating. Thank you for everything. Love, Vivian." I was on the second line when my phone rang. I picked it up without looking, expecting it to be my coworker about Tuesday's meeting. It wasn't. "Hey, sweetheart." My mother's voice had that particular texture it got when she was about to say something she'd already decided before calling. Careful, pre-rehearsed. "Hey, Mom, I was just wrapping your..." "Actually, that's why I'm calling." A pause. The kind that has weight to it. "Your father and I have been talking, and we think it might be better if you didn't come this weekend." I stopped writing. The pen hovered over the card. "What?" "It's just, you know how your brother gets, and Celeste is coming, and they've been going through some things, and we don't want the energy to be complicated." Celeste, my brother Marcus's girlfriend of 8 months, a woman who had, at our last family dinner, made a comment about my apartment being cozy for a single girl with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mom." I kept my voice very flat. "It's your 35th anniversary." "I know, honey, it's just this year." "You're asking me not to come to your anniversary party because of Marcus's girlfriend?" Another pause, then my father's voice, lower, more certain, cutting in from somewhere nearby. "We're not asking you not to come forever. We're asking you to sit this one out. Celeste has family visiting from Ohio, and we want everyone comfortable." I sat there on the floor with ribbon curling around my ankles and a bread maker I'd driven across town to pick up and a card I'd written the word everything in. And I didn't say a word. "Vivian, you understand, right?" "Sure," I said. "I understand." I hung up before either of them could say anything else. The bread maker sat in the corner of my living room for 3 days. I didn't return it. I didn't move it. I just looked at it every time I walked past like it was evidence of something I wasn't ready to name yet. Then the photos started appearing on Facebook. My aunt posted first. Long table covered in white linen, the backyard strung with Edison bulbs, my mother's roses from the garden arranged in mason jars down the center. My parents cutting a small cake, laughing, my father's hand at my mother's back. Marcus and Celeste front and center in half the frames. Her in a green wrap dress I'd never seen, him in a button-down he only wore to things he considered important. And then, the caption under one of the photos. "So grateful for Celeste for pulling all of this together. Couldn't have asked for better this year, she made it feel like home." I read it twice. Then I scrolled further and saw the gift table photo. There it was, the bread maker, white box, distinctive logo. Sitting in the middle of the table with a gift tag that said, in Celeste's handwriting, I'd seen her write Marcus's name in a birthday card once. I recognized the loopy C, from Marcus and Celeste, with love. I put my phone face down on the couch and just sat there. She'd taken it, somehow, between my parents telling me not to come and the party happening. The bread maker had left my living room and arrived at their house wearing someone else's name. Except, wait. I checked my front door. The lock was intact, the bread maker was gone, and the only person who had a spare key to my apartment was my brother. The room got very quiet. I went to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, and stood at the counter drinking it slowly, staring at the backsplash tile. A detail came back to me. 3 weeks ago, Marcus had stopped by unannounced to grab a charger he'd left the last time he visited. I'd been on a work call. I buzzed him in and left the door unlocked and waved from my home office. He'd said goodbye 20 minutes later. I hadn't thought anything of it. I thought about it now. I set the glass down without finishing it. The comments under the photos were already doing what comments do. My mother's book club friends gushing over the table decorations, my aunt calling Celeste a treasure, my cousin asking where she'd gotten the roses. And then, near the bottom, one from an old family friend I hadn't spoken to in years. "Where's Vivian? I haven't seen her in ages." My mother's response, "She had a work thing. So busy these days, you know how she is." I closed the app. The next week at work was the kind of week that asks a lot of you, even when everything else in your life is fine, which it was not. I'm a senior program manager at a federal contracting firm in Charlotte. The kind of job where people send emails at 6 a.m. and expect replies by 6:15. We'd just been awarded a significant infrastructure grant from the Department of Transportation, and I was overseeing the team onboarding the new subcontractors. On Thursday, I was in a kickoff call, walking 3 new contacts through our compliance requirements when the door to the conference room opened. My assistant leaned in and said quietly, "I'm sorry, the last subcontractor rep just joined the video call. He said he's about 10 minutes late, something about a flight." I pulled up the video grid. A man appeared in the top right square, slightly out of breath, still clearly in an airport or a hotel lobby. He straightened his collar, looked at the screen, and then went completely still. I recognized him at the same moment he recognized me. Celeste's brother. I'd met him once, briefly, at a birthday party for Marcus about 4 months ago. We'd shaken hands. He'd seemed normal enough. His name was on the contract paperwork I'd reviewed that morning, Donovan Walsh, Meridian Civil Group. He said very carefully, Sorry, I wasn't expecting." "No problem," I said, professionally, pleasantly, with absolutely no expression on my face. "We were just going over Section 4 of the compliance packet, page 11. He found page 11. The call continued. Afterward, my project coordinator stopped me in the hallway. "You know that Meridian guy?" "Slightly," I said. "Personal connection." She nodded like she understood more than I'd said. He seemed rattled. "He'll be fine," I said. "Pull up the vendor schedule. I want to check the delivery timeline for the Portland site." I went home that night and made dinner and did not call my family. I did not text. I did not check Facebook. I heated up soup, watched half an episode of something I wasn't tracking, and went to bed. What I didn't know was what was happening 40 minutes away. Marcus and Celeste were having dinner with my parents when Celeste got a text from Donovan. I pieced this together later from things that came out in ways people didn't intend to let out. The text said something like, "Weird day. The program manager on the dot contract is that girl Marcus's sister? She's running the whole thing?" According to my aunt, who'd heard about it secondhand from my mother, who apparently didn't realize my aunt would eventually tell me, my mother had gone quiet for a long moment. Then she'd said, "What do you mean, running it?" And Celeste, who had spent 8 months in my family referring to me as "your other one" and "the career one," right? Had apparently looked at the table for a moment before saying carefully, "I mean, she's senior, but there's a whole team, obviously." Donovan had called her while she was still at my parents' house. I don't know exactly what he said, but I know that by the end of the call, Celeste had excused herself to the porch, and when she came back in, the energy had shifted. My mother called me the next morning. I let it go to voicemail. The message said, "Hi honey, it's Mom. We were just thinking about you and wanted to see how you're doing. Give us a call when you get a chance. Love you." I played it twice. There was something different in her voice. Not exactly warmth, more like a recalibration, like someone who has just reread a document and realized they misunderstood a key clause. My father texted that evening, "Hope work is going well, proud of what you're doing." He had never once in my adult life texted me that unprompted. I put my phone in my bag and went to the gym. Over the next 4 days, I received 2 more voicemails from my mother, a text from Marcus that said, "Hey," with no follow-up, a Facebook message from my aunt saying she'd love to have coffee, and on day 4, a handwritten note slipped into my mailbox. The note was from my mother, her stationery, the pale yellow kind she'd used for birthday cards my whole life. "Vivian, we'd love to see you. I know things felt off lately. Can we talk, Mom?" Off lately, that was one way to say it. I read it standing at the mailbox in the parking lot of my building, in my work clothes, heels still on from a presentation I'd given that afternoon. I folded it in half and put it in my coat pocket and stood there for a moment, watching a car pull out of the lot. Then I texted back, "Fine, Sunday at noon, I'll pick the place." I chose a diner near my office. I no booths, coffee that came in ceramic mugs, no tablecloths, no ambiance. Nowhere my mother could make a thing feel like a moment. She came with my father and Marcus. I had said nothing about Marcus being unwelcome, so I didn't react when I saw him walk in behind them. Celeste was not with him. We ordered. My mother asked about my job. My father asked about my apartment. Marcus looked at the table. I let them talk for a while. Then my mother put her hand over mine on the table, her version of sincerity, and said, "We just feel like there's been some distance lately, and we want to fix it. We love you, you know that." "What happened to the bread maker?" I said. Silence. "The Williams-Sonoma one, the one you pointed at in the store in July. I bought it, it was in my apartment." I looked at Marcus, "And then it was on your gift table with Celeste's name on it." Marcus opened his mouth. "I'm not looking for a story," I said quietly. "I just want you to understand that I know." My mother's hand moved off mine. "Vivian, honey, we don't want to make this into a—" "I'm not making it into anything," I said. "I just want one thing. If you're sorry, actually sorry, not sorry, the situation got complicated, then say it in front of the people who heard the other version. Grandma's birthday is in 3 weeks. Everyone will be there. That's where it should happen." My father looked at my mother. My mother looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at his coffee. "That seems like a lot of drama," my father said finally, "to dig up over a bread maker." "It's not about the bread maker," I said, and then I left enough money on the table to cover my food and walked out. I didn't cry on the way home. I drove with the radio off and the windows cracked and thought about how clean it felt to have finally said a true thing in front of them. That night I went to my desk and opened my laptop. For the past 3 years, since my parents had gone through a period of financial difficulty after my father's knee replacement and a gap in my mother's employment, I had been quietly supplementing things. Not in a showy way, a monthly transfer that covered about a third of their mortgage, the gap in their car insurance after they dropped to a cheaper plan and I worried about it, Marcus's security deposit when he moved into his current apartment because he'd had a gap between jobs and my parents had asked me to help just this once. I sat there looking at the list of recurring transfers. Then I started canceling them. Not in anger, not even with much ceremony. Just this one, done. This one, done. This one, done. Each one, a small, quiet click that felt less like revenge and more like bookkeeping. I was 31 years old and I had been writing checks for people who had asked me to skip their anniversary party so their son's girlfriend would be more comfortable and who would let that girlfriend take a gift out of my apartment and display it as her own. I was done subsidizing a story in which I was the afterthought. The clicks took about 12 minutes. Then I closed the laptop and made tea and watched the end of a movie I'd been meaning to finish for 2 months. I slept well. 3 days later, the tone changed. My mother called at 7 a.m. I was already up, already dressed, already on my second cup of coffee before a long day. I answered. "The mortgage payment didn't come through," she said, and her voice was very different from the soft version she'd used at the diner. This was something tighter. "I know," I said. A pause. "Vivian. Not honey, not sweetheart, just my name, hard at the edges. I've been covering part of your mortgage for 2.5 years, Mom. I think you knew, even if we never said it out loud, I'm not able to do that anymore." This isn't the time to. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm just not able to do it anymore. I'll send you a list of local resources. There are programs for homeowners who need bridge support. HUD has a counseling line. You might want to call them this week. She hung up. 2 hours later, Marcus called. I let it go to voicemail. He left one. Vivian, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you can't just pull the rug out like this. They depend on you. I know things got weird, but you can't. He paused. Call me back, please. I texted him the HUD number and the number for the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. Then I put my phone face down and went into my 9 a.m. meeting. Grandma's birthday came on a Saturday in November. My grandmother is 78, sharp as a blade, and still makes her own pie crust. She's the one person in my family who has always called things what they are. When I walked in, she grabbed my hand and held it for a moment and said, "There she is, the way she always does." I sat near her. My parents arrived, then Marcus, without Celeste. I learned later she had declined to come, which I thought showed a particular kind of self-awareness I hadn't expected from her. Aunts and uncles and cousins filled in around the table. It was during the cake that my uncle, who is incapable of leaving silence alone, said loudly across the table, "So Vivian, I hear you're running some big government project?" "Program management, yeah," I said. Infrastructure grant. "Celeste's brother is on that project, right?" My aunt said, head tilted the way she does when she's pretending to be casual. "He's with one of the subcontractors, yes." A beat of silence. My uncle looked at my mother. My mother looked at her plate. "That must be interesting," my aunt said, and by the tone she meant something much larger than what she'd said. My grandmother set down her fork and looked at my mother with an expression I had seen exactly once before in my life, when a cousin had lied about breaking a window at age 9. "Patricia," she said, "my mother's name. I'd like to hear about the anniversary party." The table went still. My mother started to say something about how lovely it had been, and my grandmother said, gently but with a quality underneath that didn't move, I heard Vivian wasn't there. She had a work commitment, my mother said. "Mom, that was me. Quiet, even. You can say what actually happened. It's okay." She didn't. So I did, not dramatically, not with tears or volume. I just said, plainly, that I'd been asked not to come, that a gift I'd bought had appeared at the party under someone else's name, and that I'd been described to a family friend as having a work thing. The table was the kind of quiet where you can hear the refrigerator. My grandmother looked at my parents for a long moment. Then she said, "That is not how we raised you to treat your children." My father stared at his cake. My mother's jaw moved, but nothing came out. Marcus looked sideways at the window. And that was all. No explosion, no reconciliation montage, just the truth said plainly in a room full of people who now knew it, and no version of events that could run fast enough to outpace it. I helped my grandmother clean up afterward, the way I always do. We stood at the sink together, and she handed me things to dry, and for a while we just did that. Then she said, without looking at me, "You doing okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Actually, yeah." "Good," she said, and that was it. On the drive home, the sky was that particular November purple that happens in the early evening when the sun's already gone, but the sky hasn't caught up yet. I drove with the heat on low and the radio playing something I didn't recognize, and I felt, in a way that surprised me a little, completely fine. Not happy in a triumphant way, not bitter, just fine. Like a hinge had been oiled that had been catching for years. My parents called twice that week. I responded to both with texts, brief, not unkind. I wasn't interested in performing anger. I was also not interested in performing forgiveness I didn't feel yet. I told them I needed time and that I'd be in touch, and that I meant it. Marcus texted an actual apology on a Wednesday night, late, the kind that comes when someone has been sitting with something long enough that it starts to hurt. It said, "I shouldn't have taken it. I know that. I'm sorry, Vivian." I read it and I let it sit for a day, and then I wrote back, "I appreciate that. Let's talk sometime." Not everything gets resolved in a single conversation. I know that. I've known people who cut their families off completely and found peace in it. And I've known people who rebuilt slowly and found something real in that instead. I don't know yet which version of this is mine. What I know is this: I stopped paying for a version of my family that didn't include me. I stopped shrinking myself to fit into spaces that had already decided I didn't belong there. I said a true thing at a table full of people, and the world didn't end, and nobody's love, the love that was actually real, went anywhere. My grandmother called on a Thursday evening just to chat, the way she sometimes does. We talked for 40 minutes about nothing important: a show she'd been watching, a neighbor's new dog, a pie she was planning to make for Christmas. Before she hung up, she said, "Come early on Christmas, would you? Help me with the crust." "Yeah," I said, "I'll be there." And I will. I keep thinking about those 12 minutes. That's how long it took me to cancel everything: the mortgage transfers, the insurance gap payments, Marcus's old security deposit arrangement that had quietly become permanent. 12 minutes to undo 3 years of writing checks for people who had decided, without much deliberation, that I was the one they could afford to lose. I don't say that to sound cold. I say it because I think about cause and effect a lot now, more than I used to. Not in a cosmic sense. I'm not someone who believes the universe is keeping score, but in a practical, observable sense, what we allow tends to continue. What we fund tends to grow. I had been funding a version of my family that left me off the guest list, and I had done it quietly, month after month, because some part of me believed that if I kept giving, eventually they'd see me clearly. That's not how it worked. And understanding why it didn't work, really sitting with it, not just feeling hurt, but actually thinking it through, that took something I had to build deliberately. It took me a long time to get honest about the difference between loyalty and habit, between love and inertia, between staying because something is worth saving and staying because leaving feels too final to face. Those aren't the same things. I confused them for years, and I was smart enough in most areas of my life to know better, which made it harder to admit I'd been getting this one wrong. What changed wasn't the bread maker. It wasn't even the party, or the photo, or finding out my brother had used his spare key while I was on a work call. What changed was sitting in that diner booth watching my mother put her hand over mine and say we just want to move past it. And understanding, clearly, that moving past it meant moving past the truth of what had happened, not through it. They wanted the relationship without the reckoning. They wanted me back as a function, not as a person. I've thought about what it actually takes to walk away from that without bitterness eating you alive. It takes something close to what I'd call integrity. Not the word people put on office posters, but the real version, the one where your actions match what you actually believe, even when it costs you something. It takes clear-eyed thinking about what's real, not what you wish were real or what you are afraid to look at directly. And it takes a kind of stamina that doesn't announce itself. The quiet kind, where you keep showing up for your own life even when the people who were supposed to show up for you didn't. My grandmother handed me a dish to dry that night and didn't say much. That mattered more than any conversation I'd had with my parents in years. She saw what happened and called it what it was, not because she wanted drama, but because she'd lived long enough to know that silence in the face of something wrong isn't peace. It's just postponement. I'm not done with my family. I don't know what we become from here. But I know what I'm not willing to be anymore. The one who quietly makes things easier for everyone else while being made smaller in the process. That version of me served her purpose. She's done now. Christmas is coming. I'll be at my grandmother's early, helping with the crust. That's enough.